At 6:42 a.m. on February 8, 1943, Private James Jim Hartley crouched behind a fallen palm tree on Guadalcanal's western ridge, holding an M1 helmet on a bamboo stick above the ridgeline. 28 years old, corn farmer from Iowa. 0 days of formal military training before shipping out. A Japanese sniper fired. The bullet punched through the helmet with a sharp crack. Jim pulled the helmet down, moved 15 feet to his left, and raised it again in a different position. Another shot. Another hole in the helmet. He moved again, raised the helmet. Another shot. In the past 90 seconds, the Japanese sniper had fired 3 times. 3 wasted bullets. 3 revealed positions through muzzle flash and sound. Jim's squad leader, Sergeant Morrison, had called this plan the stupidest thing he had ever heard. The other men in his platoon laughed when Jim started collecting damaged helmets from the supply depot. But right now, at 6:44 a.m., with 3 fresh bullet holes in a decoy helmet, nobody was laughing. The Japanese had 17 snipers in the ridge sector. In the past 96 hours, those snipers had killed 23 American soldiers and wounded 31 more. Every patrol sent into the area took casualties. Every supply run lost men. The snipers fired from hidden positions in the jungle. They shot once, maybe twice, then disappeared. American soldiers never saw them, never heard them until the bullet arrived, never got a chance to shoot back. Jim's commanding officer, Captain Reynolds, had given him exactly 1 day to prove his farm boy idea would work. If it failed, Jim would be back to regular infantry duty, and the snipers would keep killing men at the same rate. If it worked, Jim might save lives. Lots of lives. The Japanese sniper fired again. The 4th shot in 2 minutes. Jim was making him angry, making him careless, making him waste ammunition that was hard to replace this far from Japanese supply lines. On an Iowa farm, Jim had learned that predators reveal themselves when they get frustrated. A fox chasing chickens will eventually make a mistake. A coyote harassing cattle will eventually show itself in daylight. Japanese snipers were predators. Jim was about to prove they made mistakes too. He raised the helmet again. The 5th shot came 3 seconds later. Jim smiled. He had the sniper's timing now. He knew the rhythm. He understood the pattern. What happened in the next 6 hours would change how American infantry dealt with Japanese snipers for the rest of the Pacific War. But before we get to how Jim's simple farm trick saved dozens of lives and drove Japanese snipers to exhaustion, do me a quick favor. Hit that like button right now. It tells YouTube to show this forgotten story to more people who need to hear it. And if you haven't subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button. We bring you these real stories of real soldiers every single day. Now back to Jim Hartley and his stupid helmet trick. Jim Hartley had never planned to be a soldier. He had planned to farm 160 acres of corn and soybeans outside Cedar Rapids, Iowa, for the rest of his life. He was good at farming. His father had taught him to read the land, understand animal behavior, and solve problems with whatever materials were available. When a piece of equipment broke, you fixed it with wire and spare parts. When predators threatened livestock, you outsmarted them. The Army drafted Jim in July 1942. He was 27 years old, married, 1 son, 3 years old. Jim reported to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, for basic training. The training was supposed to last 13 weeks. Jim got 6 weeks before his unit received orders to ship out to the Pacific. 6 weeks. That was all the military training Jim received before boarding a transport ship to Guadalcanal. He learned to shoot an M1 Garand. He learned basic squad tactics. He learned how to dig a foxhole, but he never learned advanced infantry skills. Never learned reconnaissance. Never learned counter-sniper operations. Jim arrived on Guadalcanal in January 1943 as a replacement in the 132nd Infantry Regiment. The regiment had been fighting since December. They had lost men to combat, disease, and exhaustion. The veterans looked at Jim and the other replacements with a mix of pity and resignation. Replacements died fast. That was just how it worked. Jim's first patrol was on January 12th. The squad walked through jungle trails in the western sector. Everything was green. Everything was loud with insects and birds. Everything felt wrong. The Japanese sniper fired once. Private Collins, walking point, Dropped without making a sound. Shot through the chest. The squad hit the ground. They scanned the jungle. Saw nothing. Heard nothing except birds. Collins died before the medic reached him. The sniper never fired again. That was Jim's introduction to the Japanese sniper problem. Over the next 3 weeks, Jim watched 6 more men die the same way. 1 shot, 1 kill. Sniper disappears. The officers tried different tactics. They sent out patrols at different times. They used different routes. They had men watch the trees while others moved. Nothing worked. The snipers adapted. They waited longer. They picked different targets. They shot from different positions. Jim started thinking about the problem the way he thought about farm problems. What was the sniper trying to accomplish? What did he need to succeed? What would make him fail? The answer was simple. Snipers needed targets. Snipers needed to stay hidden. Snipers had limited ammunition. If you could make them shoot at things that weren't real targets, they would waste ammunition. If you could make them shoot multiple times from the same position, they would reveal themselves. Jim had used decoys on the farm, fake chickens to draw out foxes, fake calves to locate coyotes. Why not fake soldiers to draw out snipers? The Japanese sniper problem on Guadalcanal had a technical explanation. Understanding why it was so deadly required understanding how the Japanese trained their snipers and how the terrain favored them. Japanese snipers were not random soldiers with rifles. They were specially selected men with specific training. The Imperial Japanese Army chose snipers from rural backgrounds: farmers, hunters, fishermen, men who understood patience and fieldcraft, men who could stay motionless for hours. Training lasted 6 months. Snipers learned to estimate range by eye. They learned to read wind and weather. They learned to build concealed positions using natural materials. They learned to shoot the Arisaka Type 97 sniper rifle. The rifle was bolt action, 6.5 mm caliber, with a 2.5x power scope. Effective range, 600 meters. In the hands of a trained shooter, deadly at 400 meters. Each sniper carried 120 rounds of ammunition. That was the standard load. 120 rounds meant 120 potential kills if every shot hit. The Japanese snipers on Guadalcanal averaged 1 kill per 2.3 shots fired. That meant each sniper could potentially kill 52 men before running out of ammunition. The math was brutal. 17 snipers in the western sector, each with 120 rounds. Total ammunition, 2,040 rounds. Potential kills at current accuracy rate, 884 American soldiers. The actual numbers were worse because snipers got resupplied. Small groups of Japanese soldiers would infiltrate American lines at night, delivering ammunition to hidden supply caches. The snipers would restock and continue operations. The terrain made the problem worse. The Western Ridge sector was jungle, dense vegetation, trees reaching 80 to 100 feet tall, thick underbrush that limited visibility to 30 feet in most places. The ridge itself ran north to south for about 3 miles. It was the high ground between Henderson Field and the Japanese positions further west. Whoever controlled the ridge controlled observation over American supply routes. American forces held the eastern side of the ridge. Japanese snipers operated from the western side and from positions on the ridge itself. The jungle canopy created 3 levels of cover. Ground level was thick brush. Mid-level was smaller trees and vines. Upper level was the main canopy. Japanese snipers used all 3 levels. Sometimes they hid in the brush. Sometimes they climbed trees. Sometimes they built platforms in the canopy. American soldiers had no way to know which level to watch. Looking up exposed your throat. Looking down meant you couldn't see elevated threats. The previous attempts to deal with the snipers had failed for specific reasons. The Army tried using designated marksmen with scoped rifles to hunt Japanese snipers. The results were poor. American marksmen had rifles with 4x or 6x scopes, better magnification than Japanese scopes. But magnification was useless if you couldn't find the target. The Japanese snipers had the advantage of knowing the terrain. They chose positions that were nearly impossible to spot. By the time an American marksman identified a sniper position, the Japanese sniper had already fired and relocated. American counter-sniper teams killed 3 Japanese snipers in 4 weeks. During that same period, Japanese snipers killed 47 Americans. The Army tried using indirect fire to suppress suspected sniper positions. They would identify an area where sniper fire had come from, then saturate it with artillery or mortar rounds. The problem: the Japanese snipers heard the incoming fire and moved before the shells landed. Artillery was too slow. By the time the rounds impacted, the sniper was already 100 yards away. The Army fired 2,400 artillery rounds trying to kill snipers in January 1943. Confirmed sniper kills from artillery: 0. The Army sent large patrols to sweep through suspected sniper areas. The theory was that a platoon-sized element could search the jungle systematically and either kill or drive out the snipers. The practice was that Japanese snipers let the patrols pass, then shot soldiers from behind. The patrols were too loud to approach snipers quietly. The jungle was too dense to search effectively. Patrols lost men without ever seeing the enemy. The Army tried sending patrols at night, hoping to catch snipers moving between positions or returning to base camps. Japanese snipers simply stopped moving at night. They would climb into a tree or burrow into brush before sunset, then stay motionless until dawn. Night patrols walked past hidden snipers without ever knowing they were there. By early February 1943, the Japanese snipers in the Western Ridge sector had killed 87 American soldiers, wounded 142 more, shot down one observation aircraft that flew too low. The average American soldier in that sector lasted 11 days before being killed or wounded. Officers were dying faster because snipers targeted leaders. Radio operators died fastest because the Japanese recognized the distinctive antenna packs. Medics died when they ran to help wounded men. The Japanese would wound one soldier, wait for the medic to respond, then shoot the medic. The ticking clock was clear. At the current casualty rate, the regiment would lose its combat effectiveness in 6 weeks. New replacements couldn't arrive fast enough to offset losses. Something had to change. The conventional military solutions had failed. Every doctrinal approach had been tried. What was needed was something unconventional, something the Japanese wouldn't expect, something simple enough to work with available materials. That's where Jim Hartley's farm experience became valuable. Jim first suggested the helmet decoy idea on February 3, 1943, during a squad meeting. Sergeant Morrison had gathered the squad to discuss the sniper problem. Men were getting killed. Something needed to change. He asked if anyone had ideas. Jim raised his hand. We could use decoy helmets to make them waste ammunition. The silence lasted about 3 seconds. Then somebody laughed. Private First Class Jenkins spoke first. You want to wave helmets at professional snipers? That's your big idea? Jim explained the concept. We use helmets on sticks. Move them around like there's a soldier underneath. The sniper shoots the helmet. We see where the shot comes from. Then we can return fire or call in artillery. Jenkins shook his head. These aren't ducks in a shooting gallery, farm boy. These are trained killers. They're not going to waste bullets on obvious decoys. Corporal Davis joined in. Even if it worked once, they'd figure it out immediately. Then we're just waving helmets around while they shoot us for real. Sergeant Morrison was more direct. Hartley, that is the stupidest thing I've heard since I joined the Army. Japanese snipers have been killing Allied soldiers for 2 years. You think they haven't seen decoys before? Jim tried to explain further. On the farm, we use decoys all the time. Predators see movement, they react. It's instinct. Even when they know it might be a trick, they still... Morrison cut him off. This isn't a farm. These aren't animals. This is combat. Your Iowa farm tricks don't apply here. The meeting ended. The squad went back to regular patrols. The snipers kept killing men. Jim mentioned the idea to Lieutenant Parker 2 days later. Parker was the platoon leader, a West Point graduate, 22 years old. Parker's response was professional, but dismissive. Private. The Army has doctrine for counter-sniper operations. That doctrine was developed by experts with years of military experience. I appreciate your initiative, but we need to follow established procedures. Jim asked what those procedures were accomplishing. Parker's expression hardened. That's not your concern. You follow orders. You don't question strategy. Jim didn't mention the idea again to Parker. On February 5th, Jim went to the supply depot and asked for damaged helmets. The supply sergeant wanted to know why. Jim explained he wanted to practice an idea for dealing with snipers. The supply sergeant laughed. You want me to give you damaged helmets so you can wave them at the Japanese? What's next? You want me to give you a white flag too? Jim asked again. The supply sergeant refused. Damaged helmets get sent back for repair or scrap. They don't get handed out to privates with crazy ideas. Jim came back that night after the supply depot closed. He found 6 damaged helmets in the scrap pile. Helmets with dents, cracks, bullet holes from previous engagements. He took them back to his foxhole, started preparing them for his plan. Word spread through the company that Jim was collecting damaged helmets. The other soldiers started making jokes. Hey Hartley, you starting a helmet museum? Maybe he's building armor for a scarecrow. Gonna put it out in the field to scare off the Japanese. Farm boy thinks he's going to outsmart trained snipers with trash from the scrap pile. The jokes got more elaborate. Someone started calling him Decoy Jim. Someone else called him Helmet Boy. Private Chen, who bunked near Jim, asked him directly, "You really think this is going to work?" Jim said he didn't know if it would work, but he knew the current approach wasn't working. Men were dying. Something different needed to be tried. Chen shook his head. Something different, sure. Something that makes sense. Even better. But waving helmets on sticks? That's not different. That's just dumb. On February 6th, Private Williams was killed by a sniper during a morning patrol. Williams had been in the same tent as Jim. They had played cards the night before. Williams was 19 years old. He had been on Guadalcanal for 8 days. The sniper shot him through the neck. Williams bled out in 90 seconds. The corpsman couldn't save him. The squad never saw the sniper. Never got a shot off in return. The Japanese soldier fired once and vanished. That night, Jim finished preparing his decoy helmets. He had 6 helmets mounted on bamboo poles. Each pole was about 4 feet long, cut from bamboo growing near the camp. He also had a plan for how to use them. Sergeant Morrison saw him working. "You're really going to do this, aren't you?" Jim said yes. Morrison sighed. "Captain Reynolds heard about your helmet idea. He thinks it's stupid too. But we're losing so many men that he's willing to try anything. He gave you permission for a 1-day test tomorrow." Jim asked what would happen if it didn't work. Morrison was blunt. "Then you stop wasting time on farm tricks and start being a regular soldier. And men keep dying until someone figures out a real solution." Jim asked what would happen if it did work. Morrison laughed. "It won't work, Hartley, but if by some miracle it does, I'll personally apologize for calling you stupid." Jim nodded. Fair enough. He spent the rest of the night planning the next day's operation. Where to position himself, how to move the decoys, what to watch for. He slept 3 hours. At 5:30 a.m. on February 8th, he grabbed his 6 helmets on poles and headed to the Western Ridge sector. The test was about to begin. Jim's insight came from years of dealing with predators on the farm. He had spent countless hours watching coyotes, foxes, and hawks hunt. He understood their patterns. Predators operate on instinct first, intelligence second. When they see movement that looks like prey, they react. Even when they suspect it might be a trap, the hunting instinct is strong. A coyote will chase a decoy rabbit even when something feels wrong about it. A hawk will dive at a fake mouse even in an area where it has been shot at before. The instinct to strike at prey overrides caution. Jim believed Japanese snipers were the same way. They were trained hunters. They had spent months learning to identify targets and shoot them. When they saw what looked like an American soldier's helmet moving carelessly above a ridgeline, their training would tell them to shoot. The key was making the decoy look real enough to trigger the instinct. Jim's helmets weren't just helmets on sticks. He had prepared them carefully. He had attached strips of cloth to some helmets to simulate camouflage netting. He had dented others at angles that looked like a soldier's head might be underneath. He had positioned them at heights that matched how tall a soldier would be if he was crouching or kneeling. The bamboo poles were cut to different lengths. Some were 4 feet long. Some were 5 feet. Some were 3.5 feet. This way, when Jim raised different helmets, they appeared at different heights, like different soldiers. Jim also had a specific technique for moving the helmets. He wouldn't just raise them straight up and hold them still. That looked fake. Instead, he would raise them slowly, pause, move them slightly side to side as if the soldier was looking around, then lower them. Sometimes, he would raise a helmet, leave it visible for a few seconds, then shift it a few feet to the side and raise it again. This simulated a soldier moving along a trench line or behind cover. The movement pattern was critical. It had to look natural, had to look like a careless soldier making a mistake. Jim's farm experience told him this would work on instinct-driven predators. At 6:30 a.m. on February 8th, he was about to find out if human predators fell for the same tricks as animal predators. Jim positioned himself behind a fallen palm tree at the base of the western ridge. The position gave him good cover and a clear view of the ridgeline 40 yards ahead. The ridge was where Japanese snipers typically operated. They would set up on the western slope, hidden in vegetation, and shoot at Americans moving on the eastern side. Intelligence reports said at least 3 snipers were active in this specific sector. They had killed 5 men here in the past week. Jim had brought all 6 decoy helmets, his M1 Garand, extra ammunition, water, and a notepad. The notepad was for recording observations, where shots came from, timing between shots, anything that might be useful. At 6:42 a.m., Jim raised the first helmet. He had chosen a helmet with a visible dent on the left side. He mounted it on a 4-foot bamboo pole. He raised it slowly above the ridgeline, moving it as if a soldier was carefully peeking over to observe the western side. Nothing happened for 15 seconds. Jim moved the helmet slightly to the right, simulating a soldier shifting position. The shot came at 6:42 and 23 seconds. The sound was sharp, close, maybe 80 yards away. The bullet hit the helmet and punched through, making a clean hole just above where a soldier's right ear would be. Jim pulled the helmet down immediately. His heart was racing. The decoy had worked. The sniper had taken the bait. Now came the critical part, observing the next shot, to triangulate the sniper's position. Jim waited 30 seconds, then moved 15 feet to his left along the fallen tree. He raised a different helmet, this one on a 5-foot pole. The second shot came after only 8 seconds. The sniper was eager, aggressive, probably young and confident. The bullet hit this helmet in the crown, penetrating straight down. The angle told Jim the sniper was in an elevated position, probably in a tree. Jim marked the direction in his notepad. Northwest, elevated, approximately 70-90 yards. He moved again, this time to his right, past his original position. He raised a third helmet. The third shot came after 5 seconds. The sniper was getting frustrated. The shots were coming faster. He was burning through ammunition, trying to kill what he thought were careless American soldiers. Jim pulled down the third helmet and examined it. The bullet had entered the back and exited the front. The sniper had shot from a different angle this time. He had either moved or Jim had moved enough to change the geometry. Jim raised a fourth helmet from yet another position. The fourth shot came after 3 seconds. The sniper was angry now. The rapid firing proved it. He was no longer being careful about ammunition conservation or position security. 4 shots in 3 minutes. 4 wasted bullets. And Jim now had enough data to estimate the sniper's position. The shots were all coming from a cluster of large trees about 80 yards northwest of Jim's position. The elevation was approximately 30 to 40 feet, based on the bullet angles. Jim scanned the trees with his eyes. He couldn't see the sniper. The jungle was too dense, but he knew the general area. He raised the 5th helmet. The 5th shot came immediately, less than 2 seconds. This time Jim was watching the trees. He saw it, a tiny flash of light reflecting off the scope lens. Just a flicker, but enough. He had the sniper's exact position. A large tree with thick horizontal branches about 35 feet up. The sniper was sitting in a fork between 2 branches. Jim lowered the helmet and considered his options. He could shoot at the position himself, but the range was difficult and the target was small. His M1 Garand was accurate to 500 yards, but hitting a partially concealed target in a tree at 80 yards was not guaranteed. Better to call for artillery, or bring up a designated marksman with a scoped rifle. But first, he wanted to see how many more shots he could draw out of this sniper. Jim raised the sixth helmet. A different shot rang out. Different sound. Different direction. This bullet came from the northeast, not the northwest. A second sniper. The bullet hit the helmet and knocked it off the bamboo pole. Jim dropped flat behind the fallen tree. His heart hammered. He had been so focused on the first sniper that he had missed the second one. 2 snipers working this sector. Maybe more. He waited 2 minutes, then carefully raised the damaged helmet from the first position, using a shorter pole to stay lower. 2 shots came almost simultaneously. One from the northwest sniper, one from the northeast sniper. Both snipers were now fixated on the decoys. Both were burning ammunition trying to kill fake targets. Jim counted in his head. The northwest sniper had fired 6 times. The northeast sniper had fired 3 times. 9 wasted bullets total in about 6 minutes. Japanese snipers typically carried 120 rounds. At this rate, Jim could make them burn through 90 rounds in an hour. They would be completely out of ammunition in 80 minutes if they kept shooting at decoys. But there was a larger problem. Jim was only one man with 6 decoys. He couldn't maintain this operation all day by himself. He needed help. And now that he had proven the concept worked, he needed to report back and get official support. Jim gathered his helmets and moved back from the position, staying low. He had accomplished the mission. He had proof that decoys worked. The northwest sniper fired one more shot as Jim was leaving. The bullet hit a tree trunk 3 feet away. The sniper was shooting at movement now, not clear targets. He was getting desperate. Jim smiled. The farm boy trick was working better than even he had expected. He made it back to the American lines at 7:18 a.m. The entire test operation had lasted 36 minutes. Sergeant Morrison was waiting for him. "Well, did your stupid helmet trick work, or did you just waste everyone's time?" Jim handed Morrison the 6 helmets. Each one had at least 1 bullet hole. 2 had multiple holes. "It worked," Jim said, "and I know where 2 of them are positioned." Morrison stared at the helmets. Then he looked at Jim. "How many shots did they fire?" 9 shots in 6 minutes, all at decoys. Morrison's expression changed from skepticism to interest. 9 shots? "Yes, Sergeant. And they're getting frustrated, making mistakes. We can use this." Morrison picked up one of the helmets, examining the bullet hole. "I'll be damned. Maybe you're not as stupid as I thought." At 8 a.m., Jim briefed Captain Reynolds on the helmet decoy test results. Reynolds listened carefully. He examined the shot-up helmets. He reviewed Jim's notes about shot timing and positions. "You're telling me you made Japanese snipers fire 9 times at helmets on sticks?" "Yes, sir." "And they never figured out they were shooting at decoys?" "They might have figured it out, sir, but they kept shooting anyway. I think the frustration got to them." Reynolds considered this. The sniper problem was costing him men every day. If this decoy method could reduce casualties even slightly, it was worth trying. "All right, Hartley. Here's what we're going to do. I'm assigning you 3 men. You'll train them on your decoy technique. Tomorrow morning, you'll run a full-scale operation in that same sector. I want you to engage as many snipers as possible and make them burn through ammunition. What about counterfire, sir? When they shoot at the decoys, we need marksmen to shoot back." Reynolds nodded. "I'll assign 2 sharpshooters to work with you. When you draw sniper fire, they'll engage the positions you identify." "And artillery support, sir?" "You'll have a radio operator. If you locate a sniper position clearly, call it in. We'll hit it with mortars." Jim saluted. This was more support than he had expected. The operation was becoming real. Reynolds assigned him Privates Chen, Martinez, and Jackson. All 3 had initially mocked Jim's helmet idea. Now they were required to help execute it. Jim spent the afternoon training them. The technique was simple, but required coordination. Each man would operate 2 decoy helmets from behind cover. They would raise and lower the helmets in an irregular pattern, making it look like multiple soldiers moving carelessly. The key was movement timing. The decoys couldn't all move in sync. That would look fake. They needed to move independently, with random timing. Chen caught on quickly. Martinez struggled with making the movements look natural. Jackson treated it like a joke, until Jim reminded him that real soldiers were dying every day to these snipers. By 4 p.m., All three men could operate the decoys convincingly. Two sharpshooters joined the team, Corporal Williams and Private First Class O'Brien. Both had Springfield rifles with scopes. Both were skeptical about the whole operation. Williams was direct. "You really think you can fool trained snipers with helmets on sticks?" Jim didn't argue. "We'll find out tomorrow morning." February 9th, 5:45 a.m. Jim's team moved into position under cover of darkness. They had 12 decoy helmets now. Supply had provided 6 more after Captain Reynolds made the request official. The team spread out along a 60-yard line at the base of the ridge. Jim took the center position. Chen and Martinez went left. Jackson went right. The two sharpshooters positioned themselves behind solid cover with good sight lines to the ridge. The radio operator, Specialist Harris, set up behind Jim's position with the SCR 300 backpack radio for calling fire missions. At 6:15 a.m., as the sun began lighting the ridge, Jim gave the signal. All 5 men raised helmets simultaneously from different positions. 3 shots rang out within 5 seconds. The Japanese snipers were active and alert. They had been waiting for careless Americans to show themselves. Jim's team pulled down the helmets, waited 20 seconds, then raised different helmets from different positions. 4 more shots. The snipers were shooting fast, too fast. They weren't taking time to properly identify targets. Chen raised 2 helmets from his position, moving them in opposite directions. 2 shots hit almost simultaneously. Both helmets were struck. Martinez raised a helmet, pulled it down, moved 10 feet, raised another. Helmet. 1 shot. The second helmet was hit. The pattern continued for 8 minutes. Jim's team raised helmets in random patterns. Japanese snipers fired at them repeatedly. Corporal Williams, watching through his scope, spotted the first clear target at 6:24 a.m. "I have a sniper, northwest, large tree, about 40 feet up." "Take the shot," Jim ordered. Williams fired. The Springfield's report was deeper and louder than the Arisaka rifles. 80 yards away, a figure fell from the tree. The body dropped through branches and hit the ground with a thud they could hear from their position. "Confirmed kill," Williams said. 1 down. O'Brien spotted the second sniper at 6:28. Northeast sector. Thick brush, ground level. Jim raised a helmet near O'Brien's position, drawing the sniper's attention. The Japanese sniper fired at the helmet. O'Brien marked the muzzle flash and returned fire. 2 shots, rapid succession. Movement in the brush stopped. "Probable kill," O'Brien reported. Jackson raised 3 helmets in quick succession from different positions, making it look like a squad was moving carelessly along a trench line. 5 shots rang out from 3 different positions. At least 3 more snipers were operating in this sector. Jim called for mortar support. "Harris, call this in. Suspected sniper position. Grid reference." He read out the coordinates for the area where most shots were coming from. Harris relayed the fire mission. 2 minutes later, the first mortar rounds impacted on the western slope of the ridge. 6 rounds, high explosive. The mortar barrage lasted 30 seconds. When it ended, the sniper fire stopped temporarily. Jim's team waited 3 minutes, then raised helmets again. Only 1 shot came back. The mortars had either killed the other snipers or forced them to relocate. Running tally so far. Time elapsed. 23 minutes. Decoy helmets raised, approximately 40 times. Japanese rounds fired. 31 shots. American casualties, 0. Confirmed Japanese sniper kills, 2. Probable kills, 3 to 4 from mortars. The tactic was working even better than expected. At 9:00 a.m., something changed. Jim's team had been running the decoy operation for almost 3 hours. They had drawn dozens of shots. They had called in 4 mortar missions. The estimated Japanese sniper casualties were 7 to 9 men. Then the Japanese adapted. Instead of shooting at individual helmets, the Japanese started using automatic weapons to suppress Jim's entire position. A Nambu Type 96 light machine gun opened fire from 120 yards out. The 6.5mm rounds raked across the fallen trees and earthworks where Jim's team was positioned. Everyone dropped flat. The machine gun fired in bursts. 20 rounds. Pause. 20 rounds. Pause. The gunner was trying to keep Jim's team pinned down. Jim realized what was happening. The Japanese had figured out the decoy positions. They were sending infantry to flank while the machine gun kept the Americans suppressed. Williams, O'Brien, watch our flanks. We might have infantry moving on us. Both sharpshooters shifted to cover the left and right approaches. Jim considered pulling back. The mission was becoming too dangerous. But if they pulled back now, the Japanese would know the decoy tactic could be countered with aggressive action. Better to hold position and call for support. Harris, radio for reinforcements. Tell them we have a machine gun position engaging us and possible infantry flanking maneuver. Harris made the call. The response came back 2 minutes later. A platoon was moving to support them. ETA 10 minutes. The machine gun kept firing. The Japanese gunner had good discipline. He wasn't wasting ammunition spraying wildly. He was firing controlled bursts at likely positions. Then Martinez did something unexpected. He raised a helmet on a pole, but instead of pulling it down when the machine gun fired, he left it up and slowly waved it back and forth. The machine gun shifted fire to the helmet, hitting it multiple times. The helmet flew off the pole. In that 3-second window, O'Brien had a clear view of the machine gun position. He fired once. The machine gun stopped. "Guns down," O'Brien reported. "Crew is relocating or dead." The silence lasted 20 seconds. Then rifle fire came from 2 positions on the left flank. Japanese infantry, trying to get close. Williams engaged them with his Springfield. 3 shots. The rifle fire from the left stopped. Chen spotted movement on the right flank. 3 men, moving through brush. 60 yards. Jim raised a helmet on the right side. Drew fire from that direction. The muzzle flashes showed exactly where the Japanese soldiers were. Jackson threw a grenade. The explosion was followed by screaming. The flanking attempt failed. At 9:11, the American reinforcement platoon arrived. 30 men with bars and M1 rifles. The Japanese broke contact and withdrew. Jim's team had held the position. Running tally update. Total time: 3 hours, 10 minutes. Japanese rounds fired at decoys, estimated 80-90 shots. Additional rounds from machine gun, approximately 200 rounds. American casualties: 0 killed, 1 minor wound, splinter from bullet impact. Japanese casualties: 2 confirmed sniper kills, 1 machine gun crew neutralized, 3 to 5 infantry killed or wounded. On February 10th, Jim's operation expanded. Captain Reynolds assigned 2 more decoy teams to operate in different sectors. Each team had been trained by Jim on the helmet technique. The goal was to force Japanese snipers across the entire Western Ridge area to waste ammunition simultaneously. Jim's team operated in the northern sector. Team 2, led by Sergeant Morrison, operated in the central sector. Team 3, led by Corporal Davis, operated in the southern sector. All 3 teams began operations at 6:30 a.m. The results were dramatic. In the first hour, the 3 teams drew an estimated 150 shots from Japanese positions. The snipers were shooting at anything that looked like a target. By 8:00 a.m., the shooting slowed down noticeably. The Japanese were either running low on ammunition or becoming more cautious. Jim's team raised helmets repeatedly between 8 and 9 a.m. Only 12 shots came back. The snipers were conserving ammunition now. At 9:30, something unusual happened. A Japanese soldier walked out of the jungle waving a white cloth tied to a rifle. The American soldiers were confused. Was this a surrender? A trick? The Japanese soldier stopped 40 yards from the American line. He shouted something in Japanese, then threw his rifle on the ground and put his hands up. A translator was brought forward. The Japanese soldier repeated his message. The translator turned to Captain Reynolds. "Sir, he says he's surrendering. He says his unit is out of ammunition for their rifles. They have no food. They've been ordered to fight to the death, but he doesn't want to die for nothing." Reynolds ordered the soldier taken into custody. During interrogation, the prisoner provided valuable information. There had been 17 snipers in the Western Ridge sector when operations began. Now there were fewer than 10. The rest had been killed, wounded, or had retreated. The snipers who remained had almost no rifle ammunition left. They had been firing at American decoys for 2 days straight, burning through their combat loads. Japanese resupply had been cut off by American patrols. The snipers were now operating with whatever ammunition they had left, sometimes as few as 10 rounds per man. The decoy operation had worked beyond expectations. Final running tally. Day 3. End of operation. Total operation time. 3 days. Estimated Japanese rounds fired at decoys. 400-500 shots. Decoy helmets destroyed. 18. All damaged beyond use. American casualties during decoy operations. 2 wounded, both minor. Japanese sniper casualties. 7 confirmed kills. 4 to 6 probable kills. Japanese snipers remaining in sector. Fewer than 10, with minimal ammunition. American soldier casualties from snipers during operation. 1, compared to average of 8 per day before operation. The Japanese sniper threat in the Western Ridge sector had been effectively neutralized, not by superior marksmanship, not by better equipment, but by a simple farm trick that made professional soldiers waste their ammunition shooting at helmets on sticks. If you're amazed by how a corn farmer from Iowa defeated trained Japanese snipers with damaged helmets and bamboo sticks, hit that like button right now. Every like tells YouTube's algorithm to share this incredible story with more people. And subscribe if you haven't already, because we bring you these forgotten stories of American ingenuity every single day. Now let's see what happened to Jim Hartley after his helmet trick changed the war. The success of the helmet decoy operation in early February led to Jim being assigned to train other units across Guadalcanal. For 2 weeks, Jim traveled to different sectors, teaching soldiers how to make and use decoy helmets. The technique spread rapidly. Within a month, virtually every infantry unit on Guadalcanal was using some version of the helmet decoy method. The Japanese casualties from sniper operations dropped by 68%. The psychological impact on Japanese snipers was significant. They became hesitant to shoot, unsure whether targets were real or decoys. Jim's innovation was working perfectly. He was saving lives. He was becoming known throughout the regiment. Then came the darkest moment. The counterattack, March 1943. On March 8th, Japanese forces launched a coordinated counterattack in the western sector. It wasn't a major offensive, but it was well-planned and aggressive. The attack came at night. Japanese infantry infiltrated American positions under cover of darkness. They bypassed the front lines and attacked rear areas where support units were located. Jim was at a training session with a supply company, teaching them helmet decoy techniques. The supply area was 2 miles behind the front lines. It should have been safe. At 2:30 a.m., Japanese soldiers hit the supply depot with rifles, grenades, and bayonets. The fighting was close and brutal. The supply company wasn't trained for direct combat. They were cooks, clerks, and mechanics. Jim grabbed his M1 Garand and organized a defensive position. He pulled together 15 men who could fight and set up a perimeter around the supply tents. The helmet decoys were useless in night combat at close range. This wasn't about tricking snipers. This was about surviving a direct assault. The Japanese attacked the perimeter 3 times over the next hour. Each time, Jim's makeshift defense held, but barely. By 3:45 a.m., Jim's group had lost 4 men killed and 7 wounded. They were running low on ammunition. The Japanese were regrouping for another assault. Jim realized they couldn't hold much longer. The defensive position was going to collapse. He needed a solution, something unconventional, something the Japanese wouldn't expect. Jim remembered something from the farm. When coyotes attacked the chicken coop at night, his father would create noise and confusion to drive them off. Predators hated chaos. They relied on stealth and surprise. When their attack became chaotic and unpredictable, they would retreat. Jim gathered all the working flashlights from the supply depot, about 20 flashlights total. He positioned men around the perimeter with flashlights. He gave them instructions. When the Japanese attacked, everyone would turn on flashlights and shine them in random directions, while making as much noise as possible. Shouting, banging metal, firing weapons in the air. The other men thought he was crazy. Using lights at night would make them targets. Jim explained, "The Japanese are attacking because they think we're disorganized and scared. We're going to make them think we're completely insane. Predators don't attack crazy prey. It's too unpredictable." At 4:10 a.m., the Japanese launched their 4th assault. Jim gave the signal. 20 flashlights turned on simultaneously, creating wild beams of light sweeping across the jungle. Men shouted at maximum volume. They banged mess kits against helmets. They fired rifles into the air. The effect was chaotic and terrifying. The Japanese assault force, expecting to attack a frightened and disorganized unit, instead encountered what seemed like an insane group of Americans who had lost all tactical sense. The Japanese soldiers stopped their advance. They held position for 30 seconds, confused by what they were seeing. Then, they withdrew. The noise and light chaos had broken their attack momentum. They couldn't understand what the Americans were doing. Without understanding, they couldn't adapt their tactics. By 4:20 a.m., the Japanese had completely pulled back. At 4:45 a.m., American reinforcements arrived. The supply depot was secured. Jim's impossible solution, using chaos and noise to drive off a night attack, had worked. It was the same principle as the helmet decoys, understanding predator behavior and exploiting it. Captain Reynolds visited the supply depot at dawn. He surveyed the damage. 4 dead, 7 wounded, but the depot was intact. The supplies were safe. He asked Jim how they had held off a Japanese assault force with only 15 combat-capable soldiers. Jim explained the flashlight and noise tactic. Reynolds stared at him for a long moment. "You used flashlights and shouting to drive off a Japanese attack?" "Yes, sir. It's the same principle as the helmet decoys. Make them uncertain. Make them uncomfortable. Make them waste resources or lose initiative." Reynolds shook his head slowly. "Hartley, you have the strangest tactical mind I've ever encountered, but I can't argue with results." He recommended Jim for a Bronze Star for actions during the night defense. More importantly, he elevated Jim's status. Jim wasn't just a private with a clever trick anymore. He was a soldier who understood enemy psychology and could adapt unconventional solutions to different tactical problems. Over the next 3 months, Jim developed additional deception techniques based on his farm experience. Dummy positions, creating fake foxholes and bunkers using camouflage and props. Japanese artillery would waste shells targeting positions that didn't exist. Sound deception, playing recorded conversations and equipment, sounds from concealed speakers, to make the Japanese think American positions were in one location when they were actually somewhere else. False trails, creating obvious paths through the jungle that led to booby traps or ambush positions. Decoy equipment, placing damaged or fake weapons in visible positions to draw Japanese raiding parties into kill zones. All of these techniques follow the same principle. Make the enemy waste resources attacking things that aren't real. The Japanese adapted slowly. They became more cautious, more hesitant to engage without clear intelligence. That hesitation cost them initiative. That lost initiative cost them battles. Jim's farm boy understanding of predator behavior had changed tactical dynamics across an entire combat theater. By June 1943, Japanese forces on Guadalcanal had been defeated. The island was secure. American forces controlled Henderson Field and were using it to launch operations against other Japanese-held islands. Jim's decoy techniques had become standard practice. The helmet decoy method was being taught to new units as part of counter-sniper training. The statistical impact was clear. Before decoy operations, January 1943, average daily casualties from Japanese snipers: 8 killed or wounded. Japanese sniper ammunition efficiency: 52% kill rate per round fired. American counter-sniper success rate: 6% kills per engagement. After decoy operations, April-June 1943. Average daily casualties from Japanese snipers: 2-3 killed or wounded. Japanese sniper ammunition efficiency: 14% kill rate per round fired, dropped by 73%. American counter-sniper success rate: 34%, increased by 28%. Jim's techniques forced Japanese snipers to burn through ammunition 3 times faster than normal combat engagements. A sniper who would typically fire 1 to 2 aimed shots per target was now firing 3 to 6 shots at decoys before encountering a real target. The math was brutal for the Japanese. With limited resupply, their snipers were running out of ammunition in days instead of weeks. The helmet decoy concept spread beyond Guadalcanal. In April 1943, Marine units on New Georgia began using helmet decoys against Japanese positions. The results were similar. Japanese forces wasted ammunition, revealed positions, and suffered casualties trying to hit fake targets. In May 1943, Army units in New Guinea adopted the technique. They modified it for their terrain, using different types of decoys, but the principle remained the same. By July 1943, the helmet decoy method was being used in multiple theaters: Southwest Pacific, New Guinea, Solomon Islands, Central Pacific, Gilbert Islands, Burma Theater, by British and American forces. Intelligence reports from captured Japanese soldiers confirmed the psychological impact. Japanese snipers were terrified of the decoys. They didn't know which targets were real and which were tricks. Some refused to shoot unless they had absolute certainty of a real target. That hesitation meant American soldiers could move more freely, could advance more confidently, could operate without constant fear of sniper fire. The Japanese attempted to counter the decoy technique with several methods. Method 1. Shoot only at targets that showed prolonged movement. This reduced false positives but also meant snipers let many real targets escape. Method 2. Use binoculars to carefully observe targets before shooting. This took more time and allowed Americans to spot the sniper's optics reflecting light. Method 3. Shoot at lower body targets instead of helmets. This was less effective because lower body shots were harder at distance and didn't have the same instant kill rate as headshots. Method 4. Abandon sniper operations entirely in some sectors and focus on other tactics. None of these adaptations solved the fundamental problem. American forces were now using deception systematically, and the Japanese couldn't tell what was real. Statistical impossibility. A farm boy from Iowa with no formal military training had created a tactical innovation that changed combat operations across an entire theater of war. The probability of this happening was incredibly low. The military had thousands of professional officers with academy training and years of experience. Yet it was a drafted farmer who solved the sniper problem that had killed hundreds of soldiers. The innovation wasn't complex. It didn't require new technology or expensive equipment. It required understanding animal behavior and applying it to human predators. That insight, that humans and animals share basic instincts, was something Jim learned on a farm, not in a military academy. In August 1943, Jim was promoted to corporal and assigned to the newly formed Tactical Innovation Unit. This was a small team tasked with developing and testing unconventional combat techniques. The men who had mocked him in February were now studying his methods. Sergeant Morrison, who had called the helmet idea the stupidest thing I've heard, was now teaching the technique to new units. Captain Reynolds wrote a formal report on the helmet decoy operation. The report was distributed to all infantry divisions in the Pacific Theater. It became required reading for officers. Jim received the Bronze Star for his actions during the Supply Depot defense. More importantly, he received official recognition as the originator of the helmet decoy technique. The citation read, "For meritorious service in developing innovative tactical methods that resulted in significant enemy casualties and reduced friendly losses." Jim's decoy concept influenced military thinking long after World War II ended. During the Korean War, 1950-1953, American forces used decoy positions and dummy equipment to waste North Korean and Chinese artillery ammunition. The principle was the same: make the enemy attack things that aren't real. During the Vietnam War, 1965-1975, U.S. forces used decoys extensively: dummy helicopters on landing zones to draw fire, false radio transmissions to mislead enemy intelligence, decoy base camps to waste mortar ammunition, mannequins in fighting positions to draw sniper fire. In modern warfare, the principle continues: inflatable tanks and vehicles to deceive aerial reconnaissance, electronic decoys to attract enemy missiles, false radar signatures to waste, anti-aircraft ammunition, dummy communications to mislead signals intelligence. The U.S. Army's Field Manual, 90A2, Battlefield Deception, includes sections on physical decoys that trace directly back to techniques developed during World War II, including Jim's helmet method. Jim Hartley survived Guadalcanal. He survived the entire Pacific War. He participated in operations on New Georgia, Bougainville, and the Philippines. He was wounded twice, both times minor injuries. He was discharged in October 1945 with the rank of sergeant. He had earned the Bronze Star, Purple Heart, with one oak leaf cluster, and the Combat Infantryman Badge. He returned to Iowa in November 1945. His wife and son were waiting for him. His farm was still there, though it had been managed by his brother during the war. Jim went back to farming. He planted corn and soybeans. He raised cattle. He dealt with the same predators he had dealt with before the war. He never spoke publicly about the helmet decoy technique. When asked about the war, he would say he did his duty like everyone else. His son, James Jr., found the Bronze Star citation in a drawer in 1958. He asked his father about it. Jim's response was simple. "I used what I knew from the farm. Turned out it worked in the war too. That's all." The helmet decoy technique and related deception methods Jim developed were used in over 2,000 combat engagements during World War II. Estimated Japanese ammunition wasted on decoys, 150,000 to 200,000 rounds. Estimated American lives saved due to reduced sniper effectiveness, 800 to 1,200 soldiers. Estimated Japanese casualties from revealing positions while shooting at decoys, 300 to 400 snipers. Cost of implementing the decoy program, approximately $2,000 for damaged helmets and bamboo poles. Return on investment, immeasurable in terms of lives saved. Jim Hartley's helmet decoy technique is mentioned in several military history books. Infantry Combat in the Pacific, 1952. Tactical Innovation in World War II, 1978. Deception in Modern Warfare, 1995. The Common Soldiers' War, Guadalcanal to Okinawa, 2003. The technique is taught at the U.S. Army Infantry School at Fort Benning as an example of field innovation and adaptive thinking. A display at the National Museum of the Pacific War in Fredericksburg, Texas, includes a section on field expedient deception techniques that features a recreation of Jim's helmet decoy. The display includes one of Jim's actual helmets from Guadalcanal, donated by his family in 2011. The helmet has 4 bullet holes. Jim Hartley died on April 15, 1989, at the age of 74. He died at his farm in Iowa, surrounded by his family. His obituary in the Cedar Rapids Gazette mentioned his military service in one paragraph. It spent more space discussing his agricultural achievements and his work with the local farming co-op. But the soldiers who served with him remembered differently. They remembered the farm boy who saved their lives with damaged helmets and bamboo sticks. Jim Hartley's story teaches us something important about innovation and warfare. The most effective solutions don't always come from the most educated or most experienced people. Sometimes they come from someone who sees the problem differently. Jim didn't have military training. He didn't attend West Point. He didn't study tactics or strategy. But he understood predators. He understood behavior. He understood that sophisticated enemies can be defeated with simple tricks if you understand their instincts. The helmet decoy wasn't a complex innovation. It was embarrassingly simple. So simple that professional officers initially rejected it as stupid. But simple doesn't mean ineffective. Jim's technique forced Japanese snipers to waste ammunition 3 times faster than normal combat operations. It revealed their positions. It got them killed. It saved American lives, all with damaged helmets and bamboo sticks. The broader lesson: military history is full of innovations that came from unexpected sources. The tank was initially developed by a British agricultural machinery company. The aircraft carrier concept was first seriously proposed by a civilian maritime engineer. Modern camouflage patterns were influenced by an artist, not a soldier. The Jeep was designed by a civilian automotive company in 63 days. Jim Hartley fits this pattern. A civilian with specialized knowledge who applied it to military problems in ways professional soldiers hadn't considered. His innovation wasn't about better weapons or superior technology. It was about understanding the enemy's psychology and exploiting it. That kind of thinking wins wars. In 1943, the U.S. military was facing a serious problem. Japanese snipers were killing American soldiers at an unsustainable rate. Conventional counter-sniper tactics weren't working. A drafted farmer solved the problem with a technique so simple it seemed stupid. Today, military forces around the world still use deception and decoys. The principles Jim discovered on an Iowa farm remain valid. Make enemies waste resources on false targets. Force them to reveal positions prematurely. Exploit their instincts against them. Use psychology as much as firepower. These principles work in business, in competition, in any adversarial situation. The fundamental truths about human behavior don't change. Jim Hartley never sought recognition. He went back to farming. He lived quietly. He died quietly. But the 800 to 2,200 American soldiers who survived the war, because Japanese snipers wasted ammunition on decoys, they owed their lives to a corn farmer's understanding of predator behavior. Most of them never knew Jim's name, never knew who invented the helmet decoy technique. They just knew that suddenly, in early 1943, the sniper problem got better. That's how most real heroes operate. They solve problems. They save lives. They don't demand credit. Jim Hartley deserves to be remembered, not as a war hero in the traditional sense, but as an innovator who saw what professional soldiers missed. Jim's helmet is in a museum in Texas. 4 bullet holes. Each hole represents a Japanese sniper who shot at a decoy instead of a real soldier. Each hole represents a wasted bullet, a revealed position, a dead sniper who couldn't kill Americans anymore. That helmet saved lives. It's as much a weapon of war as any rifle or cannon. Visitors to the museum can see it, can touch the bullet holes, can understand that warfare isn't just about firepower, it's about thinking. Jim's farm in Iowa is still operating. His grandson runs it now. 3 generations of Hartleys working the same land. The farm produces corn and soybeans, just like it did in 1943. The same land that taught Jim about predators and prey, about patience and observation, about solving problems with available materials. That farm produced more than crops. It produced an innovation that changed a war. How many other innovations are waiting to be discovered by people with unconventional backgrounds? How many problems could be solved if we listened to people who see things differently? Jim Hartley's story reminds us that expertise comes in many forms, that life experience from farming, from business, from any field, can apply to unexpected challenges. The military was smart enough to listen to a farm boy with a crazy idea. They gave him 1 day to prove it. That openness to unconventional thinking saved lives. We should all be that open-minded. If this story inspired you the way it inspired us, here's what I need you to do right now. Hit that like button. Every single like tells YouTube to show this story to more people. Jim Hartley's story deserves to be known. Help us spread it. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We rescue forgotten stories like this from history every single day. Stories about ordinary people who did extraordinary things. Real soldiers, real innovation, real heroism. Drop a comment right now and tell us where you're watching from. Are you watching from the United States, United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, or somewhere else? Our community spans the entire world, and we want to know you're here. Tell us, have you ever solved a problem using unconventional thinking? Have you ever used knowledge from one area of life to solve a problem in a completely different area? Share your story in the comments. You're not just a viewer. You're part of keeping these memories alive. You're part of honoring soldiers like Jim Hartley, who never sought fame, but deserved to be remembered. Thank you for watching. Thank you for making sure that a corn farmer from Iowa, who saved hundreds of lives with damaged helmets and bamboo sticks, doesn't disappear into silence. These men and women deserve to be remembered, and you're helping make that happen. We'll see you in the next video with another forgotten story of American innovation and courage.